So welcome back. Today we're going through the x32 Compact by Behringer. This is what we're using now for City Church Eastside. And so I'm going to give a basic overview today on how we set up individual channels and set up a mix for City Church Eastside. So we went over in a previous video about the DCAs, about the left and right fader bank, how we use our left fader bank for our inputs, our right fader bank is for DCAs. But if you press both buttons at once, you can get channels 1 through 16 all across the board. So this is a good way to kind of get your basic mix, kind of working everything through. But we're going to focus on one channel at a time. So each channel can use these panels up here to control the different parameters of that channel. So for example, we have our gain. So we can control our gain. We can turn up the preamp gain. We can turn down the preamp gain. Okay. So if I select a channel, I can control the gain of that channel. I can also control a low cut filter, which is kind of a low, it cuts out the lower frequencies, and I can select which frequency I want that to start at, or I want to start to take away the low frequencies, and that helps kind of eliminate a lot of rumble, a lot of low-end noise that can occur in instruments or microphones that don't need to be picking up a lot of low end. So for example, my voice doesn't really have much information at below 100 hertz, so I can low pass at 100 hertz and eliminate a lot of room noise and rumbling from my microphone. Then we also have an equalizer. Now you have the ability to control the equalizer here, low, mid, high, and high, mid, and high frequency ranges. You can select which frequency you want to boost or cut, and you can use the gain knob to boost and cut the frequency, and that would be similar to the way we used to do it on the Mackie 1604. However, you can also click the view button in the bottom right corner, as you can with almost all of these panels. And now you can visually see the equalizer. And so now I can go through those same things. I can go to the low and I can boost the lows, or I can cut the lows. It's not going to make any difference unless I press the EQ button and activate the EQ on this channel. So now I can boost the lows and you'll hear the low end of my voice come up, or I can cut the lows and you'll hear the low end of my voice go away. I can do the same thing with high mids. I can boost the high mids, or I can cut the high mids. And so I have control over the different frequency ranges. I can move which frequencies I want that to be affected at. So if I boost this, I can kind of scroll it down and you kind of hear that phasing sound or flanging sound. Okay, and then I also have control over the Q, and the Q is the bandwidth, or the number of frequencies that my selection affects. So I can tighten this up and make it affect only a small number of frequencies, or I can make it really wide with a really small Q, and it'll affect a lot of frequencies. So that gives us a little bit more control over the sound itself and being able to eliminate small problems and then also accentuate certain things. Then we also have a gate. And what you notice is that when I applied this gate, when I pressed the button and I applied the gate, once I stopped talking, the sound came completely out. It turned off the microphone. And now, once I talk, the microphone turns back on. So what the gate does is it's kind of like an automatic mute. And you have a threshold that you can set. So at some point, the sound has to be louder than the threshold in order for the mic to turn on. And if the sound ever gets lower than the threshold, the mic will turn off. And so that's a very useful tool for microphones that maybe you only want to have on when sound is coming to them that is intended for them. So that's the gate. We also have a compressor, and what a compressor does is it decreases the dynamic range coming from a microphone, so it takes the loudest sounds and makes them a little bit quieter, which allows you to add gain or add volume to the quiet sounds and make the quiet sounds a bit louder. So it kind of makes it so your loudest sounds aren't quite as loud and your quiet sounds aren't quite as quiet, and everything's kind of more compressed. So it's in a smaller range. And so that's a very useful tool for eliminating a lot of the volume discrepancies or massive changes in volume in different instruments or voices. So if somebody's singing and they start singing quietly, they don't go completely away, compared to if they start to belt out a note, it doesn't get way too loud. So that's something that you can use a compressor for. And then here we have our pan. So we can pan to the left, we can pan to the right, we can go right back to the middle. So similar to on the other mixer, you can pan left and right. All right, now one of the other things that we do with this board is we have the ability to use effects. And if you click the effects button over here, you can kind of see different effects that we have selected and the different buses that they're on. So if I go to my buses, bus master 9 through 16, bus 3 is a reverb, bus 4 is, or bus 13 is reverb, bus 14 is another reverb, bus 15 is a stereo delay, and bus 16 is a multi-band compressor. And so both of these buses, 13 and 14, are controlled by the DCA here, DCA 6. And so if I go back to Pastor Mic 1 and I go here to my buses and sends on fader, Pastor Mic 1 currently is not sending anything to reverbs or delays. So if I turn up the amount that I'm sending to reverb, you can start to hear my voice be affected by reverb. If I turn up the delay, you'll start to hear in the background a small echo in my voice. Okay. So that was a really quick trick that I just did here with this thing called sends on fader. And what that does is normally your effects are controlled by the aux sends, the little knobs that we use for monitor mixes and stuff like that on the old board. Well, now with this sends on fader button, if I'm looking at my buses, either buses 1 through 8 or buses 9 through 16, and if I have a channel, an input channel selected, and I press sends on fader, I actually get to see how much of this channel is going to each bus. Now, if I go the other way around and I select a bus and I'm on sends on fader, then these all jump back up to the levels of the bus, and what I see is I see how much of each instrument is going to that bus. So for example, the plate reverb, I have the lead vocal and the rhythm acoustic going to the plate reverb. I have a rhythm electric and electric guitar going to the room reverb. I have the lead vocal and the rhythm acoustic going to the delay, which I don't really want, so I'll fix that up. So that's an interesting trick that you can use with the sends on fader button, and gives you kind of a visual display of what's going to what bus. And that'll become useful as well in monitor mixes. So that's the basics of how to set up a channel, the control panels up here that allow you to set the preamp gain, the equalizer, the gate, the dynamics or the compressor, as well as the panning, and then also how these inputs get mapped to buses.